So, yeah, as was already mentioned, I'm a researcher. I study cities and I study religion, so I guess this is kind of the perfect event for me. And as an urban researcher, I'm especially interested in the everyday lives of city dwellers, the rhythms and the rules that govern how people go about their day-to-day lives. And as a scholar of religion, I'm particularly interested in how religion is lived in local contexts. So I'm not so much interested in the institutions and the dogmas of religion as I am in the kind of everyday habits and practices of people in faith. And in recent years, I've become convinced that to study the everyday life of the city and of religion, it's not enough to just look at what happens in the streets and to look at what happens in the different settings where people go about and practice their faith. We also have to look at the digital realm. To ignore the digital in our investigations would mean to miss a highly consequential dimension of urban life. So at this point you might think, this is to change the slides? All right, at this point you might think, wait a minute, are you really telling us that we should take all this seriously? All the way around, here we are. So for instance, people that show off their brunch, is that really so consequential? People that show off their dance moves. People that say, hey, look at me, I Amsterdam. People that post their shameless gym selfies. Hashtag. My answer is yes. We should be taking this seriously. We should be taking it just as seriously as we do face-to-face encounters in the public realm. Social media have meaning and they create meaning. In my research, I've been focusing on image-based social media and especially on Instagram. Why did I pick up this interest? Well, today images are constantly all around us. More photographs were taken in the year 2014, not that very long ago, than in the entire history of photography before then. So in just 1 year, over 1 trillion pictures were taken. That was more pictures, scholars estimate, than had been taken ever since the invention of photography before then. By a conservative estimate, people took 1.2 trillion photos last year. That's not even counting pictures taken by machines or surveillance cameras. And digital photography and smartphones are, of course, what make the difference here. They make taking pictures and sharing images a frictionless and, for some, indeed ceaseless undertaking. Just yesterday, that's the other big number here. Just yesterday, Instagram announced that they now have 1 billion active users, 1 billion, with a B. When I started researching this, they had 400 million, and I already thought that was pretty crazy. But yeah, these are big numbers, but the change that I'm interested in is not just a quantitative change, all these pictures, it's also a qualitative one. So the way that we navigate our day-to-day lives, the city, the way we figure out our place within society is bound up with these ubiquitous images. One way to think about the qualitative change ushered in by these kinds of social media is as an intensification of the trends that we associate with urban life more generally. Scholars like Georg Simmel in the early 20th century characterized urban life in terms of its fleeting, superficial, and mediated contexts and its sensory overload, which has been alluded to before. So people are brought into especially exchange relationships, instrumental relationships, with a great variety of people on an ongoing basis in cities. And social media, I would argue, do the same, but they speed things up even further. Urban scholars also used to assume that due to these features of urban life, urbanization would bring about secularization. We now know that religion actually thrives in urban spaces, not despite, but perhaps because of pluralism. What about social media? What do they do to the experience of religion? This map shows the location of Instagram posts shared by local Amsterdam Instagrammers, in fact, over a period of 6 months. Using the data behind this map, my colleague Justus Outermark at the University of Amsterdam and I have been able to trace some of the ways urban life is shaped by social media. This work has convinced us that even seemingly trivial acts like posting a selfie or a picture of an avocado toast are consequential because they tend to reinscribe status differences among places and people in the city. Of course, people don't just interact locally through social media since they are global in reach. In the course of our research, we then became interested in a phenomenon, the phenomenon of hijab fashion. Again, hashtag. Over half a year, we collected all Instagram posts with this hashtag, a staggering 15 million of them. You see, I like to impress with big numbers tonight. So, imagine, unfortunately this is a little incomplete, but imagine that there's a world map underlying this plot here. That would tell you the location of the mostly young women who make up the hijab fashion world. As you can see, there are a lot here in Indonesia. And the fact that these dots are all the same color, namely blue, shows that they mostly comment on and like posts by others in their same region. The green dots are distributed in Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, North America, and Australia. These show the locations of hijab fashionistas who interact with other women from around the world. As you can see, the network is global, but it's not evenly distributed. There are several regional centers with far greater levels of activity. We noticed that Rotterdam is one such regional center, the most active one in continental Europe. With the help of Leila Wiersma and Malika Wacha, two very talented young researchers, we were able to look not just into the digital side of this phenomenon, but also its local expression. And what we found really kind of surprised us. So the mostly Turkish Dutch women we found in our data were really kind of stars with hundreds of thousands of followers. That's more than most Dutch TV personalities would have. However, in the local context of Rotterdam, they appear actually rather marginal. So the storefronts where they sell their hijab fashion are quite unremarkable and sometimes a bit off the beaten track. Our research assistants had some difficulty finding them. The fashion fairs, they often take place in kind of nondescript buildings on the outskirts of town. On Instagram, however, there is a picture of glamour, and like I said, these are really stars. So if I had been, like I used to do urban research, an urban ethnographer walking the streets of Rotterdam, I would have maybe easily missed this vibrant community and the economy around these fashion practices. If I hadn't given the digital due consideration, I would not have been able to see the women that are designing, modeling, and selling these beautiful headscarves and other items of clothing. And I wouldn't have known that they were stars with an international following, that they were successful entrepreneurs selling their own brands to women coming from as far as Germany, Belgium, and France. Researchers, I might have then observed that hijab is frequently stigmatized in the Netherlands, and that to wear it proudly and visibly is an act of defiance against xenophobia, Islamophobia. But that would be missing a big part of the picture, a big part of the story, because by and large, hijab fashion is not about defiance and resistance, but in fact about affirming belonging in a global community. So that's just one example from our research that underscores the point that I started out with, and that I'd like you to take home with you, that to understand urban life and religion today, we must consider the urban, the digital, and the ways that they are entangled. What we do online is sometimes, but mostly, not just a fun diversion, but every bit as consequential and meaningful as every other everyday practices, and has to be seen as such. Thank you.